This is my third attempt in writing a script about the game Genshin Impact. I've played the game since version 1.0, I have a playtime of over 800 hours, and I am at AR 59. So that obviously means I have a lot to say about the game. Maybe too much to say. The script I originally wrote came at around a 2-hour reading time, and I almost worked with that. And then I realized that this isn't what I wanted to say about the game. The game has issues, a lot of issues. The combat is mindless fun at best and frustrating at worst. The grind is unforgiving and exhausting, and the story is oftentimes a confused mess. But I don't have to touch on every single little thing I think about this game. If you want to listen to a man angrily shout at a gacha game for 2 hours, then there are plenty more ways to hear opinions like that on the internet. But listening to myself go on and on about the frustrations I had with this game that I loved was depressing. And I almost pushed through with that original script because I had already put so much time into writing it and recording it. But while I was recording footage for the video, I had an epiphany. I needed footage of me doing whatever in Genshin Impact, walking around, fighting enemies, so, I decided I'd just go around and cleanse areas of chests, try to 100% those areas. And I ended up really enjoying it. I mean, sure, I was watching Breaking Bad in the background while doing a lot of recording that footage, but when I wasn't, when it was just me walking around, taking in the scenery, and listening to the music, it was incredible. So I guess that's what I've decided to do with this video instead. I want to scream praises about this game that I genuinely love. I want to talk about the magical world of Teyvat. I'm going to mention story content available as of patch 2.8, so if you care about spoilers, please leave the video. Genshin Impact's story, as with any JRPG, is long and convoluted. Sure, if you want to summarize it in a short little sentence, it's about an outlander's quest across the 7 nations of Teyvat to find their sibling. But under that sentence, there are so many different plot lines. First, there is the sibling. The sibling is currently sided with an antagonistic force called the Abyss, who are remnants of an ancient civilization called Conria, which was destroyed in a cataclysmic event 500 years ago. This event was so disastrous that the harm it caused can still be felt today, across the 7 nations. Speaking of those 7 nations, each one of them has their own self-contained story, equipped with a fun cast of characters, an Archon with issues, and a conflict for us to solve. That last nation, Snezhnaya, houses our other antagonistic force, the Vatsui, a faction whose goal it is to gather Gnosises, items that make the Archons into gods. They plan to use those Gnosises to challenge Celestia, a place in the sky for gods who are simply more powerful than our gods down here. We don't know much about it, but what we do know is that A, they caused the downfall of Conria, and B, the unknown god who stopped us and our sibling from leaving Teyvat is from up there. Most of the events that will happen in this game happen because of a result of those concepts. The setup for Genshin's plot is simply fascinating, and whenever I think about it, I get so excited for its future potential. I can't wait to see what they do with the final confrontation with our sibling, the confrontation with Celestia, and even outside of the main plot. All the future nations pique my interest simply from the snippets we've seen from the background. But that's the thing. Am I really interested in this story, or am I just interested in the potential of a good one? Hoyoverse is unfortunately known to ruin concepts that sound amazing on paper. For example, the previously known to be asshole toward the Traveler and major antagonist Scaramouche is now showing signs of a potential future redemption arc. Genshin is often criticized for being just a waifu collection simulator, and while that is true to some extent, there is obviously so much more to the game. But it is also really obvious to us, the players, that a lot of the writing is done in service of marketing. All of the playable characters have to be friendly and appealing to a wider player base. And while that isn't a bad thing, it can be a detriment to certain characters. And if you think the fan base is overreacting, well, it's already happened to one character in the game. The Raiden Shogun, or A, which I will call her now for simplicity's sake, is the Archon of Inazuma, the land of Electro and Eternity. Long story short, she lost someone very dear to her in the cataclysmic events 500 years ago, so to ensure her people wouldn't suffer the same loss she did, she began her pursuit for eternity, resulting in the Vision Hunt Decree, which aimed to strip people of their visions, and the Sakoku Decree, which stopped anyone from leaving or entering Inazuma. The events of this lead to several casualties and an entire war, so of course this sets A up to be the antagonist for the Inazuma arc. And wow, was I excited for a character to not only be a villainous Archon, but also just a playable character who isn't too fond of the Traveler. But sadly, my hopes were shattered, and they redeemed her in the worst way possible. In her pursuit for eternity, A put her consciousness in a realm inside her sword. Her physical body, and currently only window to the outside world, is actually a Shogun puppet replica. So the story makes it seem like this puppet was being fed false information and being manipulated by the Futsui. Okay, I guess that kind of excuses her for her actions because her only window into the outside world was being manipulated by the Futsui, so she didn't know how much her people were hurt, right? Wrong. She actually knew about the Futui's plot, and allowed it because their plot did not conflict with her vision of eternity. So she knew that the Futsui were trying to manipulate her, and she knew about the war going on because of her decisions. But do you really expect me to believe she cared about the livelihoods of her people when she did not even bother to check on their well-being and how the war was affecting them? Not only was the potential of an antagonistic playable character shattered, but it also made me completely apathetic for A as a character. She did a horrible thing and the writers relieved her of any responsibility. This, along with the laundry list of disappointments from the hyped-up final act of the Inazuma arc, and you can see why fans have no more faith in Hoyoverse's writing. Just recently, Genshin finally revealed the designs of all the Futsui Harbingers, and oh my god, their designs are outstanding. But what was first a wave of praise from the fanbase soon became a wave of doubts and fear that these characters would suffer a similar fate as A. It is understandable why people are scared for the mishandling of the Harbingers, or Celestia, or any other character for that matter. It's not just the villains, it's also affected our main characters. Let's start with Paimon. Paimon in the beginning was such a cute little companion. Her voice was still high-pitched, yes, but it was calmer and more soothing to listen to. And in general, she was just more useful as a travel guide while still being able to joke and banter with our protagonist. Now she is just an angry little gremlin. Her voice has been cranked up to 10 and is now really hard to listen to sometimes.
Paimon's not sure whether the god you're looking for is the animal god, but Paimon will take you to the animal god's place first, and there's the reason why. Paimon is lost for words. The brushwork is smooth, and the composition seems professional quality. You had no problems there. So what the heck happened with the face, huh? Explain that stupid expression! Explain it!
I really wish I was alone on this adventure sometimes because she gets really annoying, and that is such a shame because I honestly really used to like Paimon. She is obviously some all-powerful god and that's a really funny concept, but she also had great potential as just a sidekick to the Traveler. Their dynamic was genuinely cute, not amazingly written, but listening to her conversations with Traveler in the Mondstadt arc or her conversations with the Traveler in Traveler's voice lines, and it makes me really miss that Paimon. The Traveler, on the other hand, is a confused mess. They aren't given a lot of chances to speak up, so a lot of the time, Paimon speaks up for them, and that can get weird. Characters often talk directly to the Traveler, but when it's our turn to respond, Paimon ends up responding a lot of the time instead. This causes their personalities to often get mixed up, and I end up seeing them as just one character. In Archon Quest, they are shown as only having one goal, to get to their sibling. This is especially obvious in the Inazuma arc when Ayaka has to persuade the Traveler to help out with the war efforts simply because he has a one-track mind to meet the Archon and ask about their sibling. And that's fine enough, but there is such a big disconnect between this Traveler and the Traveler everywhere else. It is heavily implied that they just spend their time chilling in a region, doing commissions for the Adventurers Guild, meeting up with friends, and just partaking in shenanigans. The Traveler who has been to 3 Liyue festivals and 2 summer vacations cannot be the same one who has a one-track mind in finding their sibling. But you know what? Despite all of that, I still have some amount of hope for Genshin's writing. Call me naive, but Genshin has proven it can and is willing to put out good stories. As awful as A's redemption was, they were somehow able to redeem the character for me later on. No, it's not because they went into more detail about her sob story and her tragic past. It's not even because she ended up realizing that what she did was wrong and that she abolished her pursuit of eternity for good. Nope. It's because they made her take responsibility for her actions. She ended up fighting a literal representation of her old ideals for 500 years in order to abolish the Sakoku decree. They showed her struggling, they showed her ambition to remedy the mistakes she made in the past. And that ended up winning me over. So, yes, they can handle storylines well if they try hard enough. There are still things that Genshin is doing right through all the underwhelming writing, and I probably am setting myself up for disappointment, but I'm willing to give its story a chance. Because at times, it can be genuine, it can be heartfelt, and it can be a spectacle to behold, but most importantly, I can't ignore how purposeful a lot of the setup and foreshadowing is, how they've planned out the entire story from the beginning, all the little bits and pieces they put everywhere. I am amazed by it. And I can't wait to see what they have planned with such a fun concept for a story, because whenever I think about the Cataclysm 500 years ago, the actions of Celestia, the grief and pain the Archons have endured, the horrible things Conria must have done to deserve divine punishment, it sends shivers down my spine, gives me goosebumps, stuff like that. So I know Genshin's done something right. Of course, we can't talk about the world of Teyvat without going over its characters. It's a gacha game after all, so a large part of the story will be dedicated to its characters, and I'm willing to say that some of them are decently well written. I have my favorites, and I have some characters that I don't particularly like too much. But overall, I do really enjoy Genshin's cast. So to cover almost 50 playable characters, no other format would be more fitting than a tier list. Yeah, a bit less of a formal format, but I thought, hey, it'll make for a nice intermission between all the cheesy stuff I say about this game. So let's start off with Traveler. For the purposes of this tier list, Ether is our protagonist. I've already talked about him enough, but I just want to mention that I really wish I could like him. From the little snippets of personality we get to see in his voice lines, he's actually a kinda fun dude. He's not just a silent protagonist, he has his own insights on the world, he has fun banters with Paimon, and he has a weird agenda against a child's birds. But unfortunately, that side of him just does not shine through in the rest of the game, and instead, we get a generic self-insert. D tier. Albedo. I used to hate him because his hair looked stupid in his model, but after learning about him, he is one of the most interesting characters in Genshin. His indirect connection to Conria alone piques my interest, but he also has this whole backstory where he's a synthetic being, there are clones of him out there, and that he could turn evil and try to destroy Mondstadt at any time. I don't care much for his personality, honestly, but his backstory immediately puts him in S tier for me. Amber is a great character until you meet any other character in this game. Okay, to be fair, she has a really fun and pleasant personality. She serves as a great guide and tutorial character in the beginning, and she does have a kind of cool backstory and motivation, with the Outriders and her missing grandfather. But really, most of the time you see her as just an upbeat girl with nothing else really going on. Not boring, but not that intriguing or interesting either. She is the definition of a B-tier character. Ayaka, same sentiment as Amber, she doesn't have much going on, a bit on the generic side, and it doesn't help that her backstory is a massive cliche. But she's inoffensive, and I don't dislike her when she's on screen, though I do find myself enjoying the upbeat Amber way more than the reserved Ayaka, so I'll put her in C tier. Barbara really isn't given a lot to do whenever she appears other than to heal people or to be a nun. But I enjoy her personality a lot. I really can't be bothered with the Jean and Barbara backstory, but I do enjoy the part of her past where she becomes an idol after reading an idol magazine and then introduces the idea of idols to the city of Mondstadt, where their only other entertainment is probably bards. That's just a really funny situation to imagine. She honestly should be in B tier, but something about her makes me just really want to put her in A tier. Maybe I just really like her character. Beto. It is such a shame that Beto isn't given much to do in the story because she is awesome. She's a pirate, she does dirty work for the Liyue Qixing, she killed a sea monster without a vision, she's just such a cool character. I almost want to put her in B tier because she's so underutilized, but her backstory is simply really cool. So A tier for her, I guess. Bennett, I don't really care for him. I mean, he's a pretty harmless addition to most stories he's in. His bad luck gimmick is whatever, and if I had to be intrigued by one part of him, it's in finding out how the hell he was born, and if his bad luck is actually some sort of divine curse. But in the end, I just don't really care much for him. He can be fun, I guess, but nothing really interests me about him. C tier. Chung Yoon has his qualities. His backstory, where he's an exorcist that has so much yin yang, whatever energy that ghosts just can't be near him, is a funny idea, but he's kind of boring. Again, can be fun, but I don't care too much. C tier. D-Luke. I love D-Luke. If I was into men, I would simp so hard for this dude. I love his voice, his attitude, his stupid Batman-like persona, and he has one of the most interesting and developed backstories. The Fatui stuff, the stuff with his dad and Kaya and everything, it's so cool. It's always a delight to see him on screen, and I can't wait to see him in the future when he has to deal with his brother. S tier. Diona, I'll say it right now, is my least favorite character. I generally just find her kind of annoying. She has no redeeming qualities other than her backstory being kind of funny. The fact that she just wants to stop the wine industry but keeps accidentally making these amazing drinks, that's just hilarious. But I just don't like the character that much. D tier. Fischl is probably in my top 5 favorite characters. It is so easy to make a character like her obnoxious and unfunny, but the way they write her is so charming, and her and Oz play off of each other exceptionally well. My only complaint is that there should be more of her. And oh, wait a minute, we did get that, and what do you know, her part of the Summertime Odyssey event is the best part. S tier. Ganyu. Huh. I again have not much to say about her. A lot of the characters in the Liyue Archon quest were utilized really poorly, and it kind of tarnished my opinion on them, you know, Zhao, Ningguang, Keqing, and Ganyu. Spoiler for later parts, all of them have kind of been redeemed for me except Ganyu. She's just there most of the time, and I'm not that interested in the third overworked woman we have in this game, and she doesn't have too much else outside of that, so C tier. Hu Tao for a significant period of time was my favorite character. As much as I talk about character backstories and such, I don't always need the deep characters. Hu Tao is simple but super fun. I love how they write her, I absolutely adore her design, and her thoughts on life and death are just pretty fascinating. S tier. Jean. It pains me to say this because I love Jean, but she is so generic. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because Ganyu and Jean are kind of in the same camp. We have a ton of these overworked women in Genshin already, and she doesn't do anything unique with that concept. The interesting parts of her backstory don't show at all if you aren't reading to the depths of text lore, and that backstory really isn't that interesting to begin with. But I really like her design, and I am biased, so I'm putting her in B tier. Kaya, I know I said that Albedo's relation to Conry alone made him incredibly interesting, and Kaya is. I just don't like him. I am put off by his design. I am not charmed by his antics and sly personality. I just think he isn't enjoyable to be around. I will put him higher just because his backstory is super fleshed out, and I can't wait for what they do with his Conrian origins, but I don't like him as a character. C tier. Keqing is honestly a very bland character. She's used as a sort of vehicle to push the agenda that Liyue doesn't need Rex Lapis to run as a nation. And I'd probably appreciate her more if they were better able to showcase Liyue's ability to run as a nation without the help of the Geo Archon. Though she has been sort of redeemed for me with the Moonchase Festival. It doesn't really focus on any established Keqing traits, but rather just makes her a more likable character with this neat little story of her befriending Xiangling. Solid B tier. Klee. I used to be insanely annoyed by Klee. Her English voice actor is very obviously not a child, but she's grown on me. I'll admit she's adorable sometimes, though most of the time when I see her, I just want to see more of her mom because that's where the interesting parts of her character come from. The idea of a child with immensely powerful bombs is still very hilarious though. A tier. Lisa, oh Lisa, how I hate your writing in English. I just wish she would stop flirting with me and calling me cutie. It's kind of uncomfortable. Though her backstory is so intriguing and there's a lot of potential for her in the future. I just wish we could see more of this serious Lisa and not the flirty, lazy librarian. C tier. The sibling? Wow, I don't really know if I can rank her because we don't know much about her. So for now, I'll just stick her in B tier because I am interested to see more of her. Though if I can say one thing, I do hope they lean more towards her being a villain because I just want to see an antagonistic Lumine. I know it doesn't make sense with the direction they're going towards, but I just want to see a villain sibling. Mona. In my original script, I sounded like I wanted to kill her. I found her pretentious and the way she spoke was just obnoxious. But then we got to the Summertime Odyssey event. Sure, she goes on and on about how she is a genius, but they did one thing that improved her character immensely. Between the Unreconciled Stars event and now, Fischl and Mona have become best friends, and their dynamic is adorable. And finally, after seeing Mona in a positive light, I was able to see the other great things about her. Her astrology is really interesting, and her big dumb hat is fun, and the way she speaks is just funny. So, from a low spot of D tier, I am moving her up to A tier. Ningguang, while my opinion on her hasn't improved by much, her hangout has made me realize that yeah, her job is really cool, and the fact that she had to climb from rags to riches is awesome. But in a game with loads of wacky and quirky characters with really played up traits, she is one of the normal people, and while I get that some people may find that as a refreshing break, the way they do it with her is kinda boring, though I will acknowledge that she has a lot of great moments. B tier. Noelle. I am trying so hard to stop my bias from shining through. I love Noelle. I love the concept of this maid who is one of the most physically powerful people in the nation, but is painfully oblivious to anything that isn't chivalry or cleaning. I wish they did more with her character, and I know she is simple to a fault, I know she isn't that great, but I love her! A tier. Qingce is amazing. Her backstory is so depressing and I just want to give her a hug. It's so tragic that a human child has been reduced to this zombie state she's in now. But she's also really adorable. I hope they do more with her. S tier. Razor. I really love Razor's backstory, and the idea of Razor being a dude raised by wolves is interesting. It's just in execution when he's in the plot and is barely even able to communicate to other people, he isn't that enjoyable to listen to. C tier. Sucrose. I don't like her design, and I'm not at all charmed by her personality, and I could not care less for her backstory. So that's all three parts of what I value in a Genshin character gone. I don't hate her, she's just there most of the time. D tier. Child is such a great character. He is the reason I have high hopes for the rest of the Harbingers because he is an antagonistic character done right. He doesn't hate you, he doesn't loathe you, he doesn't do anything malicious, and he doesn't try to kill you. So why is he a villain? Because he's devoted to the Futsui, and he loves to fight people to a concerning degree. And you know what they did to attempt to make him a marketable character? They gave him a family. Cool, I guess. Well, I'll just continue to enjoy this bloodthirsty lunatic of a man. Thank you for not ruining him, Hoyoverse. S tier. Venti. I used to hate him. I found him super annoying in the beginning, but I've grown to kinda like him. Still not my favorite to hang around, but his backstory is super interesting, and being an Archon just elevates your character as long as you aren't written badly. After Windbloom and all the stuff in Venti's quest with Stanley and him taking on the body of his dead friend, for them to give these genuine, heartfelt moments to a really mischievous character, it's nice. A tier. Xiangling. I used to find her annoying as well because she seemed super one-note about her cooking, but Moonchase has put her in a whole new light for me. Her interactions with Qingce are just really sweet, and she's a fun character whenever she appears. Solid B tier. Zhao. We're on a roll with characters I used to dislike. I used to think that Zhao is just edgy, and for a while that is what he was. It took so much for them to make me think otherwise. There was his story quest, Lantern Rite, and finally, the Chasm Archon quest made me realize that Zhao was edgy, but also a cool character. It's not bad being edgy as long as there's more to your character, and that is the case with Zhao. He is one of the most tragic characters, and I just find it really cool that he's been surviving despite all the karmic something, I don't remember what his thing was. B tier. Qingce, not much to say about him. He practices the Guhua arts. He has this undercover identity as a writer for a book loved by Inazuma. That's cool, but that's it. C tier. Xinyan, I will have to admit, the Summertime Odyssey event almost made me kinda like her, but I just can't. She isn't awful, I'm just not into her character. I'm not into her design, which I know is part of the point of her backstory. I'm not into the whole be yourself thing she has going on. She keeps going on and on about rock, and I don't get why she has a southern accent. D tier, but just barely. Maybe on a good day I put her in C tier. Zhongli is Archon number 2, and he has an incredibly interesting past with the Archon War and the Adepti. Liyue's history in general is just so interesting, and a large part of it is him. And I really enjoyed that he decided to retire being an Archon. It humanizes his character a lot, but now that he is a civilian, he kinda is just there. I don't like seeing him in the Lantern Rites and such, because he is either relegated to comic relief, or the guy we asked for advice because he's old and smart, right? He still gets his moments, I guess, so I'll put him in A tier. Rosaria is a cool concept, a nun that does undercover jobs. That's cool, but they don't do anything with that concept, really. I still like her character kinda, but I expected more to be done with her. C tier. Eula. It's cool to have a character disliked by the general populace and seeing them still try to be a better person. Despite her style of speech being very gimmicky, they don't overdo it, and she actually seems like she's developing as a character and starting to move away from vengeance will be mine. S tier. Yanfei, god, she is such a fun person to be around. There's nothing too interesting going on with her, I mean, other than the fact that she's half Adeptus and that she's a lawyer, but I just love how she's written. I love her voice actor, she's just really fun. S tier. Kazuo is a character that should be higher, but I just don't have strong feelings about him. He's just a cool, chill dude. He's featured in so many quests, and I do enjoy his presence. His backstory is neat, and him literally parrying the Raiden Shogun was such a cool moment. And I love him just being a wanderer and joining Beidou and her crew sometimes. That's cool for his character. But I just can't say I particularly love the guy a lot. B tier. Yoimiya, same sentiment as Yanfei. There's not too much interesting going on about Yoimiya, she is just a bubbly, fun personality. I love whenever she's featured in a story, and my god, her interactions with Klee were adorable. S tier. Sayu is a fun character. Her thing about being short and lazy could have been annoying, but it's handled in a funny way. Not too ecstatic about her, but she is fun. B tier. Raiden Shogun, already talked about her a lot, but I do thankfully like her as of now. Had I done this before her story quest's second act, she would have been in C or D tier, but now she gets a comfy spot in B tier. Sarah, oh my god, this is my favorite character in the game. I adore her design. Her role in the Archon quest was genuinely really cool. I like how she is loyal to the Raiden Shogun, but she isn't a total sheep. She was willing to hear Yae out if presented with sufficient evidence that the Fatui were manipulating the Raiden Shogun. And in places like Kokomi's story quest, she is shown to be an extremely competent leader. And to top it all off, she's a Tengu! That's so cool! But she is so underutilized. She is one of the only 4 stars without a story quest or hangout. And if she's featured, it is mostly just due to her role as a general. Please use her more, Hoyoverse. S tier. Kokomi's role as both a tactician and the leader of the Sangonomiya Shrine is cool. Hell, just her and Watatsumi's background in general are super interesting. I just feel like Genshin has never been able to properly display Kokomi's skills as a tactician. If they did, I would probably like her way more. Solid B tier. Aloy is here. I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn, but she is a horribly implemented crossover character. Her abilities in Genshin are incredibly generic, her model was translated horribly from her original design, and while I know this isn't her fault, she really highlights the problem with having all of the characters in the same body type have the same animations. The default female teenager animations look horrible on her, so I'm just gonna put her in D tier. Toma is a character I always joke about as being a male wife, but man, even if he is one, he is such a cool one. He cleans, he does errands, but he also manipulates people in the background with his vast network and connections, and like, that's just so cool. He's kind of just there most of the time though, but I still like him. B tier. Ito is a character I always convince myself that I dislike. He was originally leaked as this cool Oni character with muscles and even rumored to use a new weapon type or something similar to what Heizo has now. He was this rebellious dude against the Shogun, and I loved that concept. And then that concept was shattered with the unfortunate case of his in-game model, and with him being relegated to a comic relief. It's a shame for a character with this potential and his muscles, but my god do they write him amazingly. He is so charming, I love all the shenanigans he gets into, his voice acting is stellar, and he sounds like he shouldn't be in this game. Why does he know all this slang? Why can he... I don't know, but I love it. It's also over the top and done so well that I can't hate him. He's just a big, lovable guy. S tier. Goro, another one of those characters that's just there. I literally have nothing to say about him. C tier. Shunha, when I think about her, is such an amazing character. She is one of the few to actually develop as a character from our perspective, and that development was done really well. In fact, the whole Shunha part of that story quest was great. I love her concept as someone separated by society and trained in the adeptal arts, and I hope we do get to see more of her. But, I don't know, I just can't put her in S tier despite not really having any problems with her. A tier. Yunjin. Originally, I was going to put her in C tier because I thought I had nothing to say about her, but thinking about it, she's just a really pleasant person whenever she appears. Her opera stuff is really neat, but I just remember really enjoying her in her hangout. B tier. Yae Miko. Here is a big hot take. I don't like her. Same issue as Kaya, I just don't enjoy her sly personality half the time, though I will admit she is hilarious that other half of the time. I just can't get rid of this notion in my head that I find her somewhat annoying, but she does have a lot of great moments, so I'm going to put her in B tier. Ayato is what I said with Toma, but done better. It is so cool that he's one step ahead of everyone all the time. He has an information system. And ninjas! He's just got ninjas spying on people in Inazuma. That's so cool! A tier. Shinobu builds on the hilarious writing of Ito and the Arataki gang. I love having this straight man character for all these delinquents, and I love her characterization outside of the Arataki gang too. All the law stuff and her backstory where she doesn't want to be a shrine maiden, it really humanizes her, so I can't wait to see more of her in the future. A tier. And last but not least, Heizo. Heizo is an extremely new addition to Genshin, so my opinions on him haven't had the chance to fully develop. Hell, you can say that about Ayato, Yelan, and Shinobu as well. I haven't had the ability to develop strong opinions on any of these characters, but from his hangout alone, he is such a fun guy. I expected him to either be really diligent with his work or be rowdy and unhinged like Ito, but he manages to strike a great balance between both. And the banter he has with us is so fun. Ito even appears in his hangout, and you can see the difference in both characters. The way he handles Ito and that entire theater situation is hilarious, and I cannot wait to see more of him. A tier. Hey, this is me in post, and I realized I forgot to record the portion for Yelan, so I'm here now. Yelan is kinda in the same boat as Ayato, but I don't remember enjoying her character nearly as much. I love how she uses Hydro, it's really creative, I love characters that do dirty work behind the scenes, but I don't know, something just isn't right with her for me. I remember especially not enjoying her in the Chasm Archon quest, like I specifically told a friend that I loved every character there but Yelan. But I do remember really enjoying her in her story quest because it focused more on the behind the scenes work, and that's the part of her character I enjoy the most, so I guess I'll give her B tier. We're finally done. I did not expect this section to be the longest part in the video. That was too many characters to go through, and you can see that I love a lot of them. I'm indifferent to a lot of them, and overall, they're just a really fun cast of characters. A lot of them may lean toward the gimmicky side, but for me personally, it isn't overdone most of the time. These characters are an important part of the world, and if they were annoying, they would break it. So I'm glad I love a lot of them. We finally reached the part that I adore the most. In fact, I would say that it is the only reason I still am playing Genshin Impact. Sure, the future of the story is promising, the characters are lovable, but what keeps me playing is, well, the open world. Walking through a new area is an addictive loop of finding an enemy camp, defeating them for loot, then finding another chest, then maybe finding a Geoculi. Even in the start when you don't know what an animoculi does or what a primogem is, getting rewarded for just walking around and finding stuff incentivizes you to explore more and find more stuff. But that's not the reason why I was able to dedicate so much time into exploring Genshin's locales. No, the reason I love just walking around is because Hoyoverse has mastered crafting these worlds that can just pull you in and make you forget about the real world. To avoid me just rambling on and on about various Genshin locations, going on a whole tangent with each one, I want to look at one of the most important scenes in Genshin Impact, the opening cliff shot from the beginning. Okay, well, I will be using examples from other locations in the game, but I want to start by just dissecting this scene. The thought that immediately comes to your mind when you see this is probably the scenery. The game is beautiful, and there's no denying it. The graphics, while not technologically groundbreaking or even that innovative, are simply just pleasing to look at. Throughout your travels, you will be staring at all kinds of landmarks, and they all look astounding. Mondstadt's lush green pastures are perfect for the beginning nation of the game, hiding Teyvat's dark secrets with its inviting landscape. The warm yellow lights in Liyue Harbor contrasting the magnificent night sky, the pink cherry blossom petals littering the ground of the Grand Narukami Shrine. Even the harsh winter of Dragonspine, they're all just gorgeous to look at. The next thing you'll probably notice is the short orchestral piece playing in the background. I'm saying it right now, Chen is a brilliant composer. He composes all the music for this game and it is all a masterpiece. This particular piece isn't a full-length song, its purpose is to emphasize the feeling of amazement you get when you look at this cliff shot. It's a beautiful little song that tells you, everything you see is yours to explore. Music is similarly focused more on ambience rather than big catchy tunes throughout the game. Chen has masterfully crafted these songs to elevate the atmosphere of every area. I'm not an expert in music theory or anything, but I could talk about so many of these places and the songs that accompany them for hours. There are the various themes of Mondstadt City that liven up the bustling town, or the soft but chilling themes of Dragonspine. All of them are exceptional, but there's one place in Teyvat where the music conveys the atmosphere incredibly well. I don't have to tell you anything for you to know that something happened here. The architecture points to some civilization once inhabiting this place, but you know that it is now desolate, abandoned, and empty. The music just perfectly captures that feeling of hopelessness and despair, and I couldn't help but just pause to take it all in because even when I didn't know what was happening to this place, when I didn't know the background lore of Enkanomiya, the atmosphere alone was just so haunting. The last thing you might notice in this shot, well, most have probably not even taken note of it, but in the top right corner, hidden in the bright blue sky, Celestia, ever looming above you since the very start. Much like the threat of Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild, Celestia is in view from most locations, always reminding you of why you're here and what you'll have to confront. There are even remnants of Celestia's wrath in locations like the ruins of the Chasm and Dragonspine. Genshin's locales are amazing at world building. Various locations hint at events from a darker past. For example, Storm Terror's lair is actually said to be the ruins of the old capital of Mondstadt. Guyun stone forests in organic rock formations are said to be spears thrown down by the Geo Archon. The strange gap in the Musojin Gorge was cut by the Electro Archon herself to slay an ancient god whose skeleton can be seen nearby. A similarly gigantic skeleton can be found in Dragonspine. This is the skeleton of Durin, a dragon who... oh, who would have guessed? He was a creation of Khaenri'ah. Even just looking at something as simple as the mountains, you may notice that they are strangely geometric. Sure, maybe they look like that because it's easier for players to traverse, but I like to think of it as a result of the Archons terraforming the land. We know that the Anemo Archon was known to flatten mountains by slicing off their tops, and yeah, looking around Mondstadt, I could see that being the case for its geography. These Genshin locations give you a better sense of the events of the past, and it makes Teyvat's long history more believable. But Hoyoverse also does a great job of making the present of Teyvat feel lived in. NPCs can be found not only filling up towns, but also the wilderness, some being civilians, while others are from factions like the Fatsui or the Adventurers Guild. Each nation also has their own rich culture that makes each feel like a completely different place. Mondstadt City is heavily based on medieval Europe, but it keeps itself unique by focusing more on elements of freedom and animo. Windmills can be found around the city, and the city itself is built on an incline so that citizens may glide down from the top. Buildings are on different tiers of the city based on their importance. Shops and houses fill most of the bottom half, the Knights HQ taking the second highest tier, and the church and statue of the Anemo Archon at the top, signifying their deep worship for Barbados. Liyue is the economic hub of Teyvat, so everywhere you walk you're bound to find some sort of shop. And the entire bottom portion is a dock for easy shipments. The place is also obviously inspired by China, and Hoyoverse, being a Chinese studio, is able to offer a unique take on the country that still respects its culture. The Adepti, the Lantern Rite, the character designs, Yunjit's whole Chinese opera thing, it's all just really cool to see. Inazuma, while filled with the usual shrines and torii gates, stays unique by being really purple. But really, the color scheme of it is really unique, mostly comprised of very saturated greens complementing the purples of Electro. But the bright pinks of Watatsumi Island contrast the rest of Inazuma greatly, hinting at the poor relationship between the inhabitants of both places. Aspects of Japanese culture are faithfully adapted while still fitting Teyvat's world, and remnants of the war litter the country. There's even more to go over in terms of world building if you want to look at artifacts, the various books, the little notes you find in every area, the fact that NPCs from future nations give us a decent idea of what those nations may be like, or the fact that we knew the character of Arataki Ito thanks to a couple notes on a billboard. Just shows that Hoyoverse has planned out what they want their world to be like, and they know how to make a consistent and believable world. The beautiful graphics, the enchanting music that enhances the atmosphere, and the incredible world building. All of these components work together to make the intricately crafted world of Teyvat. Let me close this section with a little story from when I first played Genshin Impact. I had finally reached AR16, which meant I could invite my friends over to my world, and that I did. They brought me to places in Teyvat I had never seen, helped me fight these mysterious bosses, but the memory I remember the most was our visit to Qingyun Peak. We were venturing through the mountain ranges of Liyue when I pointed at a floating island in the sky with a statue of the Seven on it. I wanted to conquer this intimidating climb. With my limited stamina, it was tough, but eventually we persevered and made it on top of the floating island. And my god, the view. Now, I would say this was the moment that got me addicted to Genshin, but it really wasn't. I for some reason ended up taking a break until version 1.2 after this. But my god, this moment in the game is when my entire perception of Genshin changed. Before this, I still played with this preconceived notion that it was a free game, it was a gacha game, so it had to be bad, right? And yes, I will say time and time again, there's so many frustrations I have with this game. The fact that I barely talked about the gameplay in this video is kind of concerning. But my god, the fact that I can get moments like these from a game that's free? This is the moment I knew that Genshin was special. As of this video's release, Sumeru is coming up, and my god am I scared for it. A lot of us Genshin fans are putting it on a pedestal as the make or break moment of Genshin. The land of Sumeru itself looks really good, so it's already won me over, but this is the midpoint of the story. Sumeru is the land of wisdom, so of course we're going to learn something mind-boggling. There are hints of some Fatui activity and an overall darker turn for Genshin. So by putting this video up now, I am setting myself up for major disappointment if the Sumeru arc sucks. But right now, I'm glad I can say that I love this game. Making this video really helped me solidify my opinions on Genshin. Before, I was kind of scared to display it as one of my favorite games, but now, well, I've already released this video, so what can I do? I don't really know how to conclude this 40-minute long video, so I'll just say one thing. Spiral Abyss sucks. The rewards are not enough for the amount of time you put into it. It's just repetitive, monotonous, and boring. The time-based challenges don't fit Genshin's gameplay at all. Okay, you know what? Let me just pull out my old script.